Much for being with us. What are you hearing about what is actually happening in Bahrain right now?
Well, first of all, I think the PHR report is actually absolutely on target. We've been in Bahrain on the ground since February 17th. We looked into the situation at the main hospital and in other hospital clinics. We found much the same thing. We documented many of the same incidents, the same violations that the Physicians for Human Rights report deals with. I think it's important, though, to put this in a broader context. I think people are being punished basically for having supported the pro-democracy demonstrations back from mid-February to mid-March. Doctors were among those who supported those demonstrations, some of them. They're the ones who've been targeted. They're the ones who've been arrested. They're among somewhere around 500 people who are still in detention, many for weeks now, without charge, no opportunity to speak with a lawyer, no access to their families. We don't know where they are. They've been effectively disappeared. That's the shocking reality in Bahrain today.
Do you feel that the situation in Bahrain has been put on the back burner by the international community simply because of the other events that have taken place, for example, Egypt and now Libya?
Well, I don't think that's the reason. I think it has been definitely put on the back burner, but I think it's because of the involvement of Saudi Arabia and the strategic importance that the United States, the UK, other governments see with Bahrain. I mean, I think that's the reason they're being treated very much with kid gloves. And there have been next to no serious critical statements by the international community, by the U.S. and particularly the Obama administration to commenting on these outrages.
Would you classify the situation there as a humanitarian crisis? We were looking at even hospitals being targeted.
Definitely. It's a humanitarian crisis for the reason you mentioned. It's also a massive human rights crisis. I mean, we're talking about now a country that actually hasn't seen protests since the middle of March. There have not been protests, but yet on a daily basis we see raids, midnight raids, early pre-dawn raids by security forces, usually masked men pulling people out of their houses, adding to the numbers of disappeared. We see massive dismissals, upwards of about 1,000 workers, employees of different companies who've been dismissed summarily without any kind of due process, again, apparently because they supported the pro-democracy protests when they were going on in February and early March.
What do you think it would take then for countries like the United States that do have a vested interest in Bahrain to perhaps take a more active role in protecting civilians in Bahrain, which are being, as we've seen from our reports, they're being targeted and attacked by the government there? What do you think it will take for them then for the international community then to step up?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to that question, because it's something we've been pushing very hard for since the very beginnings of this crisis, so far without success. Now, I should say we do know that the Obama administration has been raising these issues with Bahraini authorities behind the scenes at the diplomatic level. But they have not been willing to speak out publicly, and I think this is a terrible shame. It's not only a problem for Bahrain, it undermines the whole message of the administration when they're so ready to condemn violations in Syria, for instance, or Libya, which they should be doing, but then they're completely silent when it comes to close friends like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain.
Joe Stork from Human Rights Watch, thank you, sir, so much for your time.
You're welcome.